And welcome back to Saving Fatherhood. We have Jeff Morgan on the line. Jeff, let's talk about Texas and the legislation that you're working on. What do you got cooking?
So the legislation has not yet been filed for this term, but let me tell you how we started this. I think it was in 2013, there was a legislator that said that heterosexual divorce is more destructive of the family than same-sex marriage ever could be. And I contacted him and I said, you're absolutely right. I said, would you consider sponsoring something to repeal no-fault divorce? Now, I don't know whether he had already thought about that, whatever it was, but that was my first contact with him. And that legislator was Matthew Krause. He's the same legislator who will be filing the legislation again this year. But I think he put forward a bill in 2015 at the very least, and then again in 2017. And if you do look, on my channel, for example, we do have testimony from that, from the bill going forth last time in 2017. The interesting thing about the bill, Joe, we had two different pieces of legislation. One of them passed out of committee unanimously, 7-0. Republicans and Democrats unanimously said, yes, we need to extend the waiting period for divorce in Texas from 60 days to 180. And it had 22 co-sponsors on the bill. The second one was to repeal the insupportability clause. Because it doesn't mean anything. Nobody knows what it means. And again, it's to give protection to the innocent spouse. Now that passed out of committee 4-3. It had 15 co-sponsors. Neither one of them made it to the floor for a vote. This year, similar bills are going to be put out. They probably will be filed tomorrow, perhaps. But we wanted to make sure that it was tailored narrowly so that it dealt with specific issues. The one, of course, extending the waiting period. The second one being, and this may not be as much as other people would like to see, but it is much better than what we have right now. It would basically be following the idea of a South Dakota or Mississippi that would say the no-fault divorce, as we call it, must be granted only with mutual consent. That's the only way it can be done. That helps to protect the innocent spouse. Because as you know, when somebody files for divorce, the other spouse is often caught off guard. The first person has his legal team planned, everything else, and the innocent spouse gets railroaded. Often can end up, almost homeless at times, lose more than half of his or her assets, and everything else. So that's what I would like to call this, the Innocent Spouse Protection Act. We've got to do something to protect an innocent spouse. And people, who's going to be against protecting an innocent spouse? This is America. We protect the innocent all the time. I was in the military. What did we do? We helped to intervene in countries to protect the innocent people. Why can't we protect the innocent spouse in a marriage relationship? And the whole thing about divorce by mutual consent, in many states you have, if we're recording each other, it has to be a two-party state. Yet why is divorce a one-party state? One party gets to file for divorce, and yet, if you want to record a conversation, you have to have the consent and the knowledge of both parties. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But again, I look at the whole thing here. We do have an opportunity. I have not seen the final bill yet. It should be filed probably tomorrow or later this week. But it will help to slow things down and give protections to the innocent spouse. And that protection is not just protection as far as, how to respond, but it also can lead to restoration of marriages, reconciliation of spouses. What happens if we could reduce the divorce rate by 20%? Do you know what a difference that would make economically in our country? There was a study done in 2008 by Edward Scafidi. He's an economist out of some university in Georgia. He mentioned that the costs to taxpayers, not to the people, to taxpayers, of unwed childbearing and divorce was at least $112 billion a year. That was a very conservative figure. He thought it could have been much higher, perhaps even up to $165 billion a year. That you're talking about the cost of a Hurricane Harvey every single year that takes place to taxpayers, that takes place throughout our country. We don't respond to it because we don't see it happening like a Hurricane Harvey where it's concentrated. It's just happening everywhere. And people are not thinking...
How do we let that happen? It just blows my mind. I know we have to make these kinds of appeals in order to get the attention of folks who are only looking at dollars and cents. those numbers are so staggering.
They are.
And they represent real pain. You don't spend that kind of money unless there's real pain going on.
Right, and the thing is, Joe, we haven't talked about the cost to the individuals. We haven't talked about the children whose college funds have been plundered because of this. We haven't talked about the mother or the father who is now finds himself out on the street. We have not talked about the suicide issue. We've not talked about the suicide issue because of forced unilateral divorce.
Right.
Why aren't we talking about this? Well, we aren't talking about the human trafficking issue. We aren't talking about the unwed pregnancy issue. We aren't talking about the criminal issue. We aren't talking about the drug use issue, the gangs, the children dropping out of high school, the children being caught in a cycle of poverty. You want to create poverty? Create divorce. That's all you need to do. If you come from an intact family.
We're worried about lawyers not having enough billable hours.
Yeah.
In fact,
Yeah.
that's the big problem.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.